Welcome to the Siege Archive, where the past speaks through the sound of war. In the autumn of 1942, on a small jungle-covered island in the southwestern Pacific, an American Marine made a decision that should have killed him within hours. His unit had been ordered to withdraw. The position they had been holding for days had become untenable. Japanese reinforcements were landing on the northern beaches, pushing south through the dense rainforest in numbers far greater than expected. The order from headquarters was clear: fall back, reconsolidate, regroup. But one Marine, a sniper attached to the reconnaissance platoon, did not fall back. He had spent the previous week mapping the terrain. He knew the trails, he knew the ridges. He knew where the Japanese supply paths cut through the jungle, where the water sources were, and where the high ground offered the cleanest fields of fire. He believed, with a strange and almost reckless certainty, that he could hold the central ridge of the island alone, not defeat the enemy, not drive them off, simply hold them, slow them down, make them bleed for every meter of ground until reinforcements could arrive. He told his lieutenant his plan. The lieutenant told him he was insane. He asked for permission anyway. Eventually, with the column already moving south and the Japanese closing fast, that permission was given. A few extra rifles, as much ammunition as he could carry, a radio, some rations, and the understanding that no one was coming back for him. By the time the rest of the company had disappeared into the jungle, he was alone on the ridge. What followed over the next 36 days would become one of the strangest and most studied small unit actions of the entire Pacific War. A single Marine, hidden in the trees of an island controlled by thousands of enemy soldiers, slowing the advance of an entire reinforcement effort with nothing but a rifle, patience, and a profound understanding of fear. To understand how this was even possible, you have to understand the nature of the war the Marines were fighting in the Pacific. By late 1942, the United States had begun its long, painful counteroffensive against the Japanese Empire. American forces had landed on a series of islands in the Solomon Chain. Their goal was to secure airfields, control sea lanes, and slowly push the Japanese perimeter back toward its home islands. The fighting was unlike anything most American soldiers had ever experienced. The terrain was brutal. Dense jungle, soaring volcanic mountains, malarial swamps, and tropical storms made every mile of advance an exhausting ordeal. The enemy was equally unfamiliar. Japanese soldiers had been trained in a doctrine that emphasized aggression, surprise, and absolute commitment. They moved silently through the jungle. They attacked at night. They infiltrated through positions thought to be secure. Surrender was almost unknown. American officers who had read about war in textbooks discovered very quickly that none of those textbooks applied here. In the middle of this strange new war, a new kind of soldier began to emerge: the Marine sniper. He was not always a designated specialist in those early months. He was often a rifleman with unusually good marksmanship who had been issued a Springfield M1903 rifle fitted with a UNRTL scope. He worked alone or in pairs. He moved slowly. He spent more time watching than shooting. He understood that a single accurate shot, fired from a position the enemy could not locate, could be more terrifying than an entire machine gun nest. And he understood something else. In a jungle, the side that could control fear could control the battlefield. The Marine left behind on that ridge had absorbed every lesson the Pacific had to teach. He spent the first day not firing a single shot. He moved methodically through the area, scouting fallback positions, hiding caches of ammunition and water at multiple points along the ridge. He cleared narrow lanes of fire through the brush. He memorized the position of every fallen log, every gap in the canopy, every elevated rock that could serve as a firing post. He prepared, on the assumption that he would need not one hiding place, but 20. By the time the first Japanese patrol came up the ridge, late on the second day, he was ready. He let them pass. He watched them through his scope, counted the men, noted their weapons and their formation, and let them disappear down the trail without firing. He needed to understand how they moved before he engaged. The next patrol, several hours later, was smaller. 6 men, advancing more carelessly through the area their first patrol had cleared. He waited until they were strung out along the trail. He picked a target near the center of the column. One shot. The crack of the rifle echoed through the trees. The man fell. The rest of the patrol scattered into the jungle, firing wildly in every direction. They could not see him. They did not know where the shot had come from. They emptied their rifles into the trees, calling out to each other in panic, then withdrew the way they had come. He did not fire again that day. He moved silently to a second position 500 meters to the east, where he watched the trail through the long afternoon and waited. By nightfall, a much larger group had returned to recover the body. He fired again. Another man fell. The group scattered again. From the very first engagements, the lesson he wanted the enemy to learn was simple. The jungle is not safe. The trail is not safe. You are not safe. In the days that followed, his tactics evolved. He never fired more than 2 or 3 shots from any single position. He rotated through the hides he had prepared, sometimes shifting 2 or 3 times in a single day. He learned to time his shots to mask the sound, firing during artillery exchanges or distant naval bombardments so that the Japanese could not pinpoint the source. He attacked supply parties, not combat units. He targeted officers, identifiable by their swords and their command behavior. He shot the men carrying radios. He shot the men reading maps. He hit the column where it would hurt the most and disappear before the survivors could react. Within a week, Japanese movement up the ridge had slowed to a crawl. What had begun as routine patrols had turned into cautious sweeps with dozens of soldiers, all moving slowly, all watching the trees, all expecting a shot that might come from anywhere. Each of those sweeps took hours. Each of them meant fewer reinforcements making it to the southern front, where the main American Marine line was fighting to hold its position. The sniper, alone on his ridge, was doing exactly what he had told his lieutenant he could do. He was slowing them down. The Japanese command on the island began to take the problem seriously. Special hunter teams were assigned to track him. Trained marksmen, supported by infantry, were sent up the ridge to find and kill him. He watched the first hunter team move through the trees from a hidden position high in the rocks. He let them pass directly beneath him without firing. They searched for hours and found nothing. After they withdrew, exhausted and frustrated, he picked off 2 stragglers at the rear of the column from nearly 600 meters away. The message was unmistakable. He was not just shooting at them, he was choosing them. As the days stretched into weeks, the conditions on the ridge became almost unbearable. He was rationing food, drinking from streams, sleeping in short broken stretches, and constantly moving to avoid detection. Tropical sores opened on his feet. Insects feasted on every exposed inch of skin. Malaria began to set in. He shivered with fever at night and burned with it during the day. But every morning he returned to his rifle. He cleaned it, inspected it, and went back to work. The radio he had been given was his only link to the world. He used it sparingly, in short bursts reporting his position, his observations, and his estimated kill count. His command, hearing the reports come in night after night, began to understand what they had on the ridge. They began to coordinate their operations around him. American patrols probing northward used his observations to choose their routes. Mortar teams used his radio reports to drop accurate fire on Japanese assembly areas he could see from his perch. Naval aircraft, flying overhead, were guided to supply convoys he had located moving along the coastal trails. A single rifleman had become, by accident and persistence, the eyes of an entire Marine sector. By the 3rd week, his ammunition was running low. He began to fire only when the target was unmistakable. An officer, a radio operator, a supply carrier. He let entire columns of regular infantry pass without engagement, conserving every round for the men whose deaths would matter most. The Japanese command, unable to locate him and unable to break through the slowdown he had imposed, began to divert more and more forces to the ridge. Forces that should have been pushing south to attack the main Marine line. By the time American reinforcements finally pushed up the ridge 36 days after he had been left behind, The entire shape of the local campaign had changed. The Japanese reinforcement effort across the central ridge had broken down. Their advance had been slowed by weeks. Their officers had been killed at a rate that paralyzed coordination. Their supply lines had been disrupted. Their soldiers, exhausted from constant alertness and the fear of an enemy they could never see, were withdrawing toward the northern beaches. When the relief patrol reached his last reported position, they found him alive, but barely standing. His uniform had rotted off his body. His feet were a mass of jungle ulcers. He had lost more than 20 pounds. His rifle was clean. His ammunition was almost gone. He could no longer remember exactly how many shots he had fired or how many men he had hit. The number was never officially confirmed. Some reports placed it in the dozens. Some placed it far higher. The exact figure mattered less than the result. A single sniper, holding a ridge alone for 36 days, had altered the timing of an entire local campaign. He was evacuated to a field hospital, then to a rear area facility, then eventually home. He recovered slowly. He never spoke much about what he had done. When pressed, he would only say that he had been doing his job, that the jungle had done most of the work, and that no man can hold a piece of ground for 36 days unless the enemy, in some small way, is helping him to do it. The story of that ridge has been told many times since, sometimes with names, sometimes without, often with details that change from one telling to the next. But the essence of it remains the same. In the dense forests of a small Pacific island, in one of the most violent wars ever fought, a single Marine proved that an entire army can be slowed by one rifle, one pair of eyes, and one mind that refuses to leave the high ground.